very honored to be able to speak today with Mr. Cesar Virata, a gentleman who's had a distinguished career in government, in business, in banking, and has had a front seat view of the development of the economies in his home country, the Philippines, as well as the rest of this region. I want to use this conversation to draw from his vast experience and his in-depth knowledge of the economies in the region to try and figure out what went right, what went wrong, what have we learned in the last 30, 50 years, and what we need to know in order to understand how this region, the Asia-Pacific region, will evolve in the near future. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Cesar Virata.
Thank you for the invitation.
Maybe we can start with a sense of what the Philippines looked like at the point in which you became Secretary of Finance in 1970, and what the rest of the region looked like when you became Secretary of Finance. From where you sat, what did you see in Taiwan, in Japan, in the rest of Southeast Asia, and what you saw your mandate was at that point in time?
We stayed too long in the import substitution industries. And that is the reason why we could not build a good foreign exchange reserve that could stabilize our economy and at the same time sustain it, because as you develop, you have to import more equipment and more technology. And we could not rely on the traditional crops of coconut, sugar, abaca, partly mining, and the worst part was deforestation, because there was extensive logging already for export to many countries of East Asia, especially Japan, Korea. The main issue then is how do we convince the vested interests who were profiting so much because of the very high tariffs. 10 days after I was appointed, well, I told the President, Mr. President, we are going to float the rate because earlier there was already an agreement between the central bank and the IMF that we are going to return to a floating rate.
Yes.
And I told the President, Mr. President, I really don't know where it would settle. From 390 to 1, I really don't know. So I told him, can you take it politically? Because I knew there were already demonstrations in the Philippines.
And how long did the Philippines have a fixed rate before that?
Well, for a long, long time, it was 2 to 1, because we could not devalue up to 1954, because in our Constitution, the U.S. President had to approve the change in exchange rate, even though we were regained our independence in 1946 under the decolonization plan. Well, it settled around 645, from 390 to 645.
Wow.
Wow. So it was a major adjustment.
What were the interested parties in the Philippine system that were rejecting the idea of moving away from
import substitution? Well, because each one had a dollar allocation, cheap. They imported tax-free equipment with income tax exemptions and a high tariff. So they
So-
were raking in money.
That should have also been raking the government in a lot of money. So your
Yes,
balance sheet would have looked very good, or at least look healthy.
yeah. That is why the reserves were always way down. And then when you impose import control and so on, in order to rebuild the reserves, the economy slows down. And when the economy slows down, we are able to rebuild the reserves. So you have all of these vested interests, all against joining, because I was telling the president we should join GATT in order to change our industrial structure. Also in 1970, I was also informed that we would have a so-called consultative group meeting with the World Bank to form a consultative group to advise the Philippines. And the purpose of the consultative group was to coordinate all the external assistance, official assistance to the Philippines, and partially also to inform the private, the foreign banks about their role in for the private sector. So I had to go to for the preparations, go to Paris for the meeting, and the invited representatives from different countries, including the international financial institutions, agreed that we should form a consultative group in order to improve and increase our development budget.
This is in 1960.
1970.
Okay.
My initial
Yes. Yeah.
things in all in 1970. And I think it was only France, the representative of France, that said, no, the Philippines don't need that. They can do it on their own. But all the rest agreed, so it was formed. And so I had to go to the various ministries in the Philippines, my colleagues, at a lower level, convincing the planning staff of each ministry, like public works, communications, and so on, agriculture, that you have to prepare very good plans. And you have to be competitive with your projects.
Right. Would you say that this was entirely state-owned infrastructure building, or would you say that it's there was a partnership with?
We have certain projects that also were done by the private sector. For example, the roads exiting out of Manila to the north and to the south, the private sector was franchised. The construction of dams, we borrowed money first from the World Bank to import the equipment, and we told the Philippine contractors, you unite, because most of you have very few equipment. And we will need different large pieces of equipment. We will lease it to you. But at the end of this project, you can buy them. Because if we did not do that and we just lease it to them, I do not know what will be the condition of the equipment at the end of the project.